All right, good morning or good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending where you are in the world. Today is Monday, June the 7th, 2021, and there's a fair bit of news to report on today. Nothing as exciting as I would say as last week, but still something to discuss and cover regarding events all around the world. So let's get into it. So first off, OnlyFans, yeah, the app or the service OnlyFans, where people, usually women, also men too. I will be honest, from what I've heard, not that I've checked myself. Basically go and sexualize themselves for money. You pay a certain fee or something like this in order to see pictures or videos, or I don't know if you could live stream on there. I've never used OnlyFans, to be honest with you, but the company itself, the whole apparatus there is under a investigation pertaining to money laundering and other financial crimes. Now, what's interesting is that news hasn't really gone full circle with regards to it circulating amongst the mainstream press, at least the time that I'm recording this, from my understanding. I just checked, local outlets, affiliates, global news outlets and things like that, and I couldn't find too much. There was an article here or there, but it wasn't like a, front page Washington Post or CNN. Apparently, this is a global, worldwide investigation spanning between multiple police departments, multiple agencies, including the FBI, allegedly Interpol as well, Canadian RCMP, which is basically Canada's version of the FBI, and stuff like that. So let's see what happens. It seems as though this is quite a lengthy investigation. Some inside sources, again, I say that carefully because we have to be careful when the mainstream media says inside sources, but some alleged inside sources, let's say, are calling it a quote, sprawling investigation, end quote, meaning that it's just that it's a big thing, that it's not a small thing by any means. So let's see what happens there. And the reason why I say that is because, again, could it be a hit job on the owner? Again, unless there's an intelligence operation or something like this, then it's hard to say. From my understanding, one of the owners resides in the UK. The investigation has also spanned to the UK as well. Of course, when you have a service like this that spans across different legal borders, barriers, you name it, and different geographical nations, you have multiple cooperative agencies, presumably, right? So let's see what happens there. The next thing is that the state of Texas, may consider studying medicinal psychedelics, particularly for people with mental health issues. Psychedelics being the main primary substance they'll be, or I guess compound or product, whatever you want to call it, they'll be looking into, in addition to some other things specifically pertaining to helping people with mental health problems, soldiers that have served, that are experiencing PTSD and things like that. It doesn't mean for certain, according to this report, that the state of Texas will definitively look into this, looking into using psychedelics, but they may in fact do so. And I have to say, I mean, personally, I know everyone's got their own personal opinion. I will be totally honest with all of you. I have no shame in saying that for quite some time I was quite hesitant to try psychedelics myself, because I was afraid that, if I had gone into it with a negative mindset, it may have affected me even after the high was over. I had heard some horror stories, again, from friends and things like this, not sure how accurate they were. Again, when I did do them, the couple of times I've done them just in the last roughly three and a half weeks, I had a great experience myself. I know everyone's different. I will admit, though, I was in a very good environment when I did them, so that could also be the case too. The next thing is that now this is what's this is when it's going to get interesting. Assad has won, President Bashar al-Assad has won his election in Syria again with 95.1% of the vote. Now, a lot of people from the international community are saying it was rigged, not necessarily in the way of the votes being rigged, but more so him having journalists and political opponents murdered and things like that. Okay, here's what I'm not trying to be an Assad toady, as they call it, or as the mainstream media calls it, or defend Assad by any metric, but at the same time, the pot's calling the kettle black here. And what I mean by that is this: we look at a lot of people that are all about, free and fair elections and things like that, generally tend to be much more liberal leaning people with regards to, having fair elections all around the world, but it gets kind of conflated. And what I mean by that is this: the mainstream media narrative, at least within the West, within the UK, it seems, within most of Europe, I would say all of Europe, actually, due to American influence, whether people like that or not, tends to favor American politics, whether it's Republican or Democrat, and it's been argued very strongly that both parties are one and the same. It's a puppet show, right? And we all know that to be the case, more so than not, like majority of the time. So what I mean by that is this: if Assad murdered his way to winning again, or he fixed the election, or he rigged it, or whatever you want to say, first, it comes down to this. What is your perspective on policy? Do you think we should be intervening? As I say this in other cases too, should we be intervening with other countries around the world, right? Now, this is when it gets more philosophical, political, and quite controversial, because there's some people that say, listen, it doesn't matter that the US is the quote-unquote stabilizing force in the world. We can argue that they've made things worse, more so than better, in nations around the world. So it doesn't matter if Assad fixed his own election or not. That's their problem, right? That's one perspective. The other perspective is, well, look, we don't trust any other country to stabilize the world, and even though we do, when I say we, I'm talking on pretending to be, the West, if you will. Even though we do fuck things up, pardon my English, on a global scale, we still maintain some sort of semblance and order, if you will. So that's the other perspective, generally speaking. It's kind of like, and Democrats and Republicans disagree with each other within their own parties on this too, by the way. Let me make that clear. So it's kind of like, the going with the devil then the devil you don't. It's hard to say, right? Where do I personally stand on this? Look, I'll be honest with you, folks. Okay, this might not be the most popular opinion, but if you want my personal opinion, so what? He fixed the election. It's not the first time he did it. The CIA's been trying to get Assad out of there since from as early as 2006 or 2008, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then now Putin partnering with Assad to make sure that the U.S. doesn't completely topple him like they did with Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein, which is a totally different argument, a totally different topic of discussion, should I say, is now basically ensuring the U.S. doesn't topple. It's a tit-for-tat move, guys. And what he does in his own country, again, if you feel that, the West should be involved, fine. But at the same time, let's take a look in the mirror here, right? The West, meaning, the CIA and things like that, they support coup d'etats constantly. So again, like I said, a couple minutes ago, the pot calling the kettle black here. Let's weigh the odds, right? Honestly, guys, it comes down to perspective and opinion. My perspective is, look, Putin sided with him so that, that Assad doesn't get taken out nearly as easily as the U.S. did to Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. So now it becomes a chess game. And if Assad fixed or rigged the election, whining about it is not going to change anything. The guy won, whether he fixed it or not. I mean, I guess you could call me more of a realist, if you will, but fuck, man, people, the reason why I'm ranting about this is because I see all these left-leaning outlets, because I read all sides of the political outlet just to, the political spectrum in the mainstream media and otherwise, to try to get an unbiased view of things, right? But man, these liberal outlets quite constantly, and I'll give conservative shit too, by the way, to be fair, but this time around, these liberal outlets that are saying, they're screaming, no, it's not fair that he rigged the election or he murdered his opponents. Yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Oh, nothing. We're just gonna complain. So nothing's gonna change. Let's move on. It's true, guys. It's a realistic perspective. Anyways, that's enough of that. The next thing, and this is another very important story, if you will, for today to report on, is that basically, to sum it up, without all the fancy schmancy words, regarding COVID, the Pentagon funneled money to Wuhan, and Fauci allegedly encouraged it. So the NIH did not directly donate to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but guess who did? Echo. NIH allegedly funneled the money to Echo, which was, again, a third-party company, if you will, but the money got funneled through a gray loophole, if you will, and people are saying that Dr. Anthony Fauci should be held responsible for this, because he encouraged back in 15 or 16, the experimentation of gain-of-function research, right? It's just like when he said to Rand Paul, we don't do it, but if we did, we do it by the book. That's like saying when you murdered somebody, I didn't murder him, but if I did, I would have got rid of the body. Oh, no shit, Sherlock. Thanks for telling me. You know what I mean? It's the same idea, at least in my perspective, right? And by the way, we can't say what I just read to you, what I just reported to all of you. This is public knowledge. We can't say this is from WikiLeaks or some, something that the mainstream media is going to try to throw some shade on or discredit. This is federal data. So at this point, I mean, maybe you can quote unquote interpret the data differently, but even then, I doubt that, you know. The next thing is that California's assault weapons ban was overturned by a federal judge, and the judge cited in pure legal theory the AR-15 can be compared to a Swiss Army knife with regards to it being a tool or weapon. Like I said, folks, the Constitution, particularly the Second Amendment, is very strong in the States. In pure legal theory, one can argue the judge is right. Now, of course, you can always battle something legally, and I guess that's the quote-unquote the beauty of the legal process, if you want to call it. I mean, we can argue that the legal system is fixed, if you will, but that's a whole other thing. Ultimately, look, if this judge made the ruling, it's as simple as that. And if enough people are upset about it, I'm sure that it will be heard. And but at the same time, I'm not naive to the fact, let's say, that there is a ton of money going into people, companies, organizations, individuals promoting the Second Amendment, specifically the NRA, donating to lobbyists to make sure that specifically Republicans, some Democrats, but most Republicans are really, really pushing for the Second Amendment to stay the way it is, no ban on any type of assault weapon or anything like that. So, look, I mean, could we say that the judges are being paid off too? It'd be hard to prove, but again, I'm just trying to weigh both sides here, right? Ultimately, though, the judge made a ruling. That's it. Simple. The next thing is that, and by the way, personally, those who want to know my opinion, for those who don't know, I'm generally a pro-gun guy. I lean in that direction. The next thing is that a scientist who told Fauci that COVID was potentially engineered. This was in an email to Fauci, who Fauci then took this guy's email in February, I think it was February 20th or 25th of 2020. He took the email and forwarded it to a colleague and said, please handle. He got an email saying that, listen, this COVID thing might be bad and it might be coming from a lab. And Fauci just sent it to a colleague saying, please handle. Like, are you kidding me? As I'll quote many other political commentators for saying, because this is not my original line, I'm pretty damn sure it wasn't handled. It spread across the entire planet, right? So, not saying that was totally Fauci's fault in that regard, but I mean, holy crap, you're talking about a virus that's potentially lethal, and that's what they say in the email at least, right? And you just say, okay, please handle. It doesn't have to be COVID. I'm talking about anything in general. That doesn't look good on Fauci's part. Let's be honest here, right? If we're taking it from a totally unbiased perspective. Right. And also the person the same individual who told Fauci COVID was potentially engineered deleted 5,000 tweets from their own personal Twitter account and then deleted their own Twitter account. I believe this was yesterday. Why, if there's nothing to hide or nothing to worry about? Right. Take that as you wish. And I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other, but the next thing is that Malaysian police, so police in Malaysia, are using heat drones to check people's temperature from above. I mean, look, I would be more concerned about the surveillance aspect of that, but at the same time, too, I mean, see, folks, the point I'm trying to make here is this. In terms of temperature checks, yeah, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but if the country of Malaysia could do that, what could the United States, what could Russia, what could China, what could the UK, which is known to be the UK, from my understanding, the king, if you will, or the queen, no pun intended, of surveillance all around the world. London, the city of London, is allegedly the most surveilled city on the planet. That might have changed by now. That might be some old stats I'm going by, but it's still up there from my understanding in terms of surveillance, facial recognition, and all that kind of fancy stuff. Look, if it's legally done, then I guess sure. If the people of Malaysia don't mind it, then sure. I'm a pretty straightforward guy in that regard. If there's a big debate about it, I personally believe you should not put those drones out there. You should not send out the drones until there's been a solidified conclusion on whether or not the people are okay with this. Because if you have half the people or a chunk of them not okay with it, the other chunk okay with it, this is still a problem, right? The next thing is that, and sorry, before I go on, some of you might say, yeah, but Dave, you always talk about how, to play devil's advocate, you always talk about how it's all about the majority of the vote of the people. Yes, but with surveillance, I take this a little bit differently. So yeah, just wanted to address that for some of those that say, wait, Dave, you might be contradicting yourself. It's context based. Most of the time I'm all for a republic sort of voting style or democratic voting style, the majority of the people. But when it comes to surveillance, I think it should be handled differently. Do I have the answer to that? No, I honestly don't believe I do. I don't, because if I did, I'd probably be in professional politics. Or maybe not, actually, considering how stupid some of them are. But the next thing is that Biden's vaccine rollout has fallen short of his goal. Okay, yeah, moving on. No, I don't think anyone really was. Yeah, okay. Jeff Bezos is going to space next month. Okay, that's cool too. The richest guy in the world's going into space. Big whoop. I mean, okay, I think we'd all love to go into space, but why this guy gets all this attention still? It just shows you how dysfunctional our society and media is, generally speaking. The next thing is that dozens were killed as two trains collided in southern Pakistan. Now, you see, that's unfortunate to hear. Like, you look at these types of things, and another one too, a roadside bomb killed 11 people in northern Afghanistan. So, we got one of them was an accident, and then another one was a bomb in so one of them was an accident in Pakistan, another one was a bomb in Afghanistan, which, again, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but just based off of the statistics and the data of recent and of past years, it's usually suicide bombs. If it wasn't, again, it's still unfortunate that people died. The fact that 11 people died in northern Afghanistan from this roadside bomb tells me pretty deliberate. I mean, there was some type of effort to execute a handful of people, and these things are not stopping in Afghanistan, right? So it's hard to bring context and bring a solution to this, other than it comes down to, ultimately, this is a political, religious, philosophical debate which is changing the overall concept of the perception of the religion that these people are living by, or standards of living that they're living by. But again, like, it's tough. No human, though, however, should have the right to take another human's life. Not at all. But at the same time, what do we discuss on this show all the time? The reality of the world, right? So it does in fact happen. The next thing is that the Taliban says that Afghans who worked for foreign forces will in fact be safe. Who knows if that's going to be a lie or not? The only people that are really going to know if that's true or not are the CIA, right? I'm sure they're still surveilling the Taliban like crazy. So those are the only people, in my humble opinion, that are really going to know the truth. The Western world, again, we could be lied to right now. With that could have been just a fake lie. That I got personally from American news, and which is why I'm always vigilant of all news. But specifically, when you find out the Washington Post has a $600 million deal with the CIA, I mean, come on, So the next thing is that Mali's military leader has been sworn in as a transitional president. Well, I mean, I guess that would make sense from my understanding. I'm not a legal scholar, as you all know, or as most of you know. I hope you all know that, though. I mean, in general, if you can't find a politically stable individual or figure that would take the reins of a transitional process during a certain time of, I guess you could say, eruption in a country, or instability, the military usually comes in because they understand the chain of command, they understand order. Now, again, the hope is that in pure theory the military does not become political and take a side. In this case, I would hope or assume that Mali's military leader being sworn in as a transitional president is literally just to ensure the fluidity and the smooth process of making sure that whoever does win or gets in there next is going to take the reins appropriately and in correspondence with their respective process, right? So that's all we could hope for. Now, if the military, if the person, the military general or leader in there, or chief, if you will, that's in charge has their own political views and they try to keep power for themselves, that's when that's exactly what's not supposed to happen, when the military is supposed to transition such events, right? Not even in countries such as Mali, even in the West, from my understanding, right? If shit got really, really bad, you would hope the military comes in and because they understand rank and file and transition, they can logistically, I mean, that's the hope. But the next thing is that Hamas has released audio of an alleged kidnapped Israeli soldier that they kidnapped, I would assume, during the recent conflict, and they're still holding this soldier allegedly. This is not good, because I'll tell you now, Israel, particularly the Mossad, it depends what type of, if they want to save this soldier or if they want to gain retaliation if this soldier is unfortunately killed, what's going to happen? More than likely the Mossad, the Israeli army, probably in a covert sense, they're going to go in there and they're just going to, I mean, they'll do what they need to do. It might not even get reported. And I say this not because I'm trying to take a side. I'm saying this because, let's be honest, Israel's intelligence agency is that they're known, generally speaking, for doing the real dirty work. So, and not really caring as much, which is why the CIA will sometimes delegate operations to the Mossad and all that. I'm not pretending to be an expert on this, but this is usually what happens. I'm sure Hamas is powerful, but not like Israel's organizational structure. simply because of the funding, the influence. We've talked about this before, right? So that'll be interesting to see if it makes the news, if the soldier's rescued, or what happens there. It would be nice to hear that the soldier's rescued, right? The next thing is that Putin has signed a law taking Russia out of the treaty called the Open Skies Treaty. Now, the Open Skies Treaty is an arms control treaty, which is a pact that allows unarmed surveillance flights over member countries. So basically, you know, the contract was entails that, you know, Russian, I guess, fighter jets could fly unarmed fighter jets over, let's just say, America, if they were both in this treaty together because they're officially partners or members. Look, if Putin wants to pull out of it, so be it. Apparently, Trump pulled out of it last year or the year before. I don't know the exact reason, so I don't want to say why. Didn't have the time to look it up before this, but look, again, this just goes to show that Russia seems to be, again, the subtle moves that they're making seem to show that they're hesitant of this new world order, if you will, or this next step forward in the globalist, I guess you could say, agenda. And sometimes it could be as simple as the Russians know what's going on and they don't want to follow along with the rest of the world with regards to the New World Order. Other cases, it could be a psyop. Who the hell knows? All I know is that this arms treaty or this pact has been essentially not broken, but undone in a professional way. The next thing is that Angela Merkel's party has won a key state in Germany for key state control. But the question then becomes, will she still be the leader or chancellor? I added that part at the end there, that question, because there's tons of articles being written, particularly within Germany, obviously, about her not being able to rally enough support to keep her as the leader of the designated party she's in. We'll see what happens. A lot of people like her, a lot of people don't. So the next thing is that Meghan and Harry, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are having another kid. Okay, let's move on because, look, congratulations, seriously. But they're two human beings having a child. A lot of other people on this planet have kids too. Why they deserve special recognition, especially from myself in this case, I don't see why. So the next thing is that Peru is on edge as vote counting begins in a tight presidential runoff. Again, as long as it's free and fair and it abides by the laws that the people have agreed to over there, then let's see the outcome. Congratulations to Peru, by the way, for, you know, hopefully a successful and democratic election. The next thing is that a statue was toppled at a Canadian Indigenous school protest because of the 215 Indigenous children. That's a big cover up there between the Catholic Church and things like that. People were pissed off that, I believe it was yesterday, the Pope had issued a saying that the Pope was very, I think it was, is very sad, and the Pope said he mourns with the people of Canada, but there was no apology. Right, and that's what stuck out to a lot of people publicly. Again, could things be going on behind the scenes? I'm sure of it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, for Christ's sake, if it's tough to issue an apology that for kids who've been dead for God knows how long now, that just goes to show you how politically corrupt, in my opinion, the Vatican is. The next thing is that the second last thing is that Kim Jong-un has waged war on slang, dialect, genes, and films. Like literally, like I guess Western movies, genes, slang, and dialect. Okay, he's just trying to, I mean, this is the problem. They're only isolating themselves more and more. See, one of the cons and the negatives, and there are some pros arguably, but one of the cons of isolating yourself as an entire nation is that, for example, I think it was, again, whether or not you believe this is up to you, but Mike Baker, I think his name is, former CIA official, said on the Joe Rogan podcast a while ago that the North Koreans, up until a handful of years ago, used to talk very quietly and whisper on the phone when they were discussing classified information. The reason for that is because they thought that they couldn't be heard if anyone had tapped the phone. And that's not true at all. So, and the point I'm trying to make is that this is one of the downsides to isolating yourself. You don't realize how out of touch with the world you are. It's not the 1950s where if you whispered on a phone, the FBI had trouble hearing in sometimes, you know, and it's true. So, the final thing is that Apple employees are rallying against the office working plan. I guess because they don't want to go back to work. They prefer working from home. I think Tim Cook had said, Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. He had said that he wanted everyone back in Apple. I think it was by September, if I'm not mistaken. So, and like I said, when you're I get it. Nothing beats in-person collaboration. Even when I do these interviews, by the way, these Kraken conversations or these roundtables, things like that, I'd have no problem doing this in person. I mean, I'd actually prefer to do it in person, right? If I could, I would even fly out to wherever I would need to fly out to myself. But again, because of, what's going on and things like that, this is what happens. You could still get shit done. Maybe not as productively as if you were in the same room as the person, yes, but my whole thing is this. If you're developing software, it's probably easier as a software developer to work from home and collaborate because it's all done on the computer anyways, right? Again, you don't have that human-to-human interaction as you would in the office, but again, the argument also goes for the, if you're developing hardware, a little bit of a different argument because it's a physical product. You're developing the physical aspect of it. You need to be in a lab, a design lab, a research and development lab to test such things, right? And so that's the other end of it. So again, to me, it's pretty simple. Software, if I were Tim Cook, maybe there's more to it than this, but the software guys stay home. The hardware guys, too bad. If you still want your job, you got to come in. Now, that's an oversimplification, right? Because what I just said right there goes against a lot of the things I've talked about before, but you see what I'm saying. And the final thing I did want to mention too, by the way, was that I was told by someone, a very, very credible person, that there are hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, I think you can find some of the raw footage online from citizen journalists, but there are hundreds of thousands of people protesting outside of the BBC in the UK right now, the BBC's headquarters, and no media outlets picked it up. It's not even like, okay, a competitor of the BBC wants to show this to say, look at how upset people are with our competitor. No, the fact that no mainstream media outlet in the UK, in Europe, in North America is covering it, and it's all citizen journalists and things like that. You might have the odd article here and there, but nothing that would be propped up by the algorithm on the search engines, right? The fact that that's the case shows that things are worse for the mainstream media and the corporations than they maybe had presumed. So that's it for today. Got lots coming out later on, and we'll catch you all later. Cheers.